clean more dirty old cars, you say? Alright, check this one out. So, the second I saw this little cracker parked under a bunch of trees while out walking the dog, knew I needed to get it cleaned on camera. Due to the fact it's owned by non-car folk and isn't needed for the daily commuters, had plenty of time to sit and accumulate a multitude of sins. However, as manky as it might look, from a cleaning perspective, I'd take organic dirt like this over heavy road grime and industrial fallout any day. Bird poo, moss, lichen, mud, tar and even a bit of timber were to be my main foes for the day, but there were other things on the car that needed tackling head on too, like the oxidised headlights for example, which had previously failed an MOT, so despite only being small I still very much had my work cut out with this one. While there's very little satisfaction in working on neglected everyday cars like these for me, mostly because it reminds me of my early valeting days, I appreciate people enjoy the transformation process, so while I'll still continue to feature the more snazzy stuff, we'll always ensure I throw the odd uncared for curveball into the mix too. Before we get stuck into the 15 years worth of dirt though, a quick mention must go out to Adrian Flux, who reached out to support my content at this uncertain time, so fair play to them for that, as it is a big help. So Adrian Flux insure thousands of UK drivers on a range of different cars, including my own previous 300 brake horsepower modified Volvo C30. They love motors as much as the drivers they cover, which is why they often take special care of car club owners and performance car owners like myself, keeping in close contact with them via their Influx and Fluxposure newsletters. All I ask is that if you're considering a car insurance quote now or any time soon, especially for something high performance or enthusiast oriented, then don't hesitate to give them a shout via the link below. While I'd mostly be focusing on the bodywork here, the 15-year-old wheels couldn't be completely overlooked, so were first treated to a contactless pre-wash with some Surfex HD from Bilt Hamber, which was applied with my similarly aged pressure sprayer and left to soak for a moment. Before being rinsed off with the Kranzle pressure washer to remove a fair bit of loose surface dirt and brake dust. An active wheel cleaner was then generously applied to their faces before being left to sit for a few minutes to work on any embedded brake dust. Once it had given a visual indication that it was doing its chemical thing by turning purple, then it was worked into and over the wheels with a few soft and stiff bristled brushes. Now, I wouldn't be tending to the rears of the wheels here, as I had far too much to be getting on with elsewhere, but aside from a few spots of stubborn staining, once rinsed off, the neglected and corroded wheel faces still looked a lot better for their unsophisticated clean. Before getting to grips with the body, I had to remove the loose tree debris from the front to prevent firing off a twig with the pressure washer and poking out a passerby's eye. Prior to treating the car with any chemicals or cleaners then, it made sense to see how much of the organic matter could be shifted with a simple pressure rinse, as water alone can often be highly effective at cutting through ingrained grime. So went ahead and did a test rinse on the bonnet, which, as you can see, knocked the dirt back considerably, leaving just the really stubborn stuff behind. This straight up methodical pre-rinse was then used to progressively recolour the rest of the car, starting with the deeply ingrained roof, which, as you can probably tell, was more difficult to pressure wash than the pavement. I could have got in a bit closer with the jet and slowed it down a bit, but you always run the risk of inflicting damage or worsening any that could be concealed under the dirt on a neglected car of this age. Plus, there was a chemical soak and second pre-rinse still to come. Roof aside, particular attention was paid to the badges, rubbers and intricate bits of trim which tend to grab onto organic growth. And although I wasn't looking to eliminate all of the visible dirt by doing this, the more of it I could remove here, the more effective the subsequent cleaning stages would be. Once the whole car had been pressure rinsed from head to toe, then it was time to up the ante with the same biodegradable Surfex HD used on the wheels to hopefully soften up the more stubborn spots on the body. Now, although you generally reserve a treatment like this for lower parts only, it was applied to the entire car here, including the deeply ingrained roof, as there was just no getting around the fact that it all needed a heavy chemical soak. After being applied, it was then blanketed over with some snow foam to protect the surface from the sun and help extend the safe soak time. Following a few minutes of immersage and softening up of surface dirt, then it was all thoroughly rinsed off from top to bottom to hopefully remove a bit more cack and prepare the car for the next stage of its deep clean. Before moving on to an actual contact wash of the car then, I took a soft brush and a separate bottle of all-purpose cleaner to use in tandem to release any remaining greenery from the nooks, crannies, badges, seals and trims that a wash mitt and some shampoo alone wouldn't be able to. There's nothing worse than giving a car like this its final dry off only to find dirty areas still staring back at you. So it's important to go through the motions instead of rushing to the contact wash falsely thinking that will solve all your ingrained problems, because most of the time it won't. While I wouldn't normally remove number plates on a single session job like this, the back one was hanging off anyway, so went ahead and pulled them off here to access the cack hidden behind that would inevitably have just kept releasing bits of dirt onto the freshly cleaned surrounding areas if I hadn't. The shuts really needed an in-depth detail of their own, but didn't really have the time to dedicate to that, so were simply flushed out with a steady stream of water to remove most of the compost so that I could at least give them a decent wipe down after the contact wash. The inside of the fuel flap was also in a right state, so was treated to a separate clean with some APC and a brush to just about bring it up to an acceptable level of clean. After probably a good couple of hours of pre-cleaning and deep cleaning then, it was finally time to give the car a good contact wash, so filled a single grit guarded bucket with some quality suds, dropped a synthetic mitt in that I knew would likely be going in the bin afterwards, and got to work. Despite the intensive pre-clean, some of the more stubborn dirt still remained, so each panel was first spritzed over with the same diluted all-purpose cleaner used on the nooks and crannies earlier to give the contact clean a bit more bite. Now, despite doing that, I still had to go in pretty heavy-handed and scrub each area a few times, as a gentle once-over on surfaces this ingrained just wouldn't have cut it. Still, I could tell that beneath the suds, the paintwork was responding quite well to the intensive scrub and starting to show signs of life again. The roof, of course, was the toughest part of the car to wash, and following another extended soak in some APC and some really vigorous contact cleaning, there was still some staining present, so knew it would require further attention either in the form of some claying or polishing. Following the intensive scrub then, the car was methodically rinsed off to ensure the washing had done what it had supposed to, and I wasn't going to have to reach for a stiff yard brush to finish the job. Thankfully though, roof aside, once finished off, the car was mostly tree fallout free. The front lower sills were peppered with tar, so while the car was still wet, I liberally coated them with a stinking citrus tar and glue remover, which pretty much instantaneously began dissolving it all. Once sufficiently softened up, the unsightly mess was then wiped away with a general purpose towel, and while my aim here wasn't to completely eliminate every tiny spot, getting rid of this heavy concentration would certainly help with the overall transformation. The Manky number plates, which like many of the other consumables on the car really needed replacing, were then given a quick seeing to in the wash bucket just to bring them up to a certain standard of clean before I went and dried the car off. Because that will be it for the majority of the paintwork, I used a ceramic spray wax designed to be used on a wet car when drying it to quickly add some protection and improve shine without actually having to do a great deal. After being spritzed, the surface was simply worked over with a microfibre towel to leave a slick and streak-free finish, which, while being far from perfect, was still a damn sight better than before. If it hadn't been a bright sunny day, then I probably would have blown the Micra's aging cracks and crevices out with my Metro sidekick. However, there wouldn't be any trapped water dribbling out of panel gaps in this weather, so simply concentrated on giving everywhere a decent towel dry. Again, going over the surface slightly more heavy-handedly than normal, as being thorough was more important than being gentle here. The previously swished shuts were then given a rudimentary wipe down with another general purpose towel to bring them roughly up to par with the exterior, and while they were really in need of a proper clean, at least now wouldn't leak dirty water onto the freshly cleaned exterior and would look somewhat presentable. With most of the battered bodywork now clean and contaminant free, it was time to slap on some tyre dressing to further lift the car's appearance. Once it had been worked in with a flat brush and left to sit on the surface for a few minutes, then, as I almost always do, buffed it back with a dry general purpose towel to remove any excess product and leave a finish which doesn't shout, "Look at me, I've just had a mini valet." It was then time to put the elbow grease to one side and let a machine in the form of my old Flex do the heavy lifting, starting with the oxidised plastic headlights. A medium density spot pad was used in conjunction with a medium cut polish from Menzerna to knock back the yellow oxidation and restore some much needed clarity, and while I could have done with a complete restoration including wet sanding, compounding, polishing and protecting, this single stage refresh would still hopefully be enough to prevent them from failing an MOT again anytime soon. While I had the polisher out then, I decided to also tackle the stained and ingrained roof with it. Claying it earlier on would have also done the job but lightly inflicted marks of its own, so chose to instead treat it to a single stage polish with an all-in-one product to cut through the staining and exfoliate the paintwork's dirty pores. After being spread and worked in at full speed, which I don't think is full speed anymore as the brushes need replacing, the residue was buffed off to thankfully reveal a crisp and clean looking surface free from any organic staining, which was night and day when compared with an unpolished section, and the filthy foam pad, which was now also destined for the bin, illustrated exactly what had been removed. Although not too apparent on camera, there were still a few stubborn spots on the bonnet as well, so despite being close to running out of steam, decided to quickly treat it to what was probably the most slapdash machine polish I've ever performed, but I doubt it had ever seen anything like this before, so couldn't really complain. While that was it for the body, in order not to take the aftershots, I finished up with an interior clean of the glass, which was unsurprisingly also in need of some TLC. A basic bulk glass cleaner was first liberally applied directly onto the windows before being worked in with a dedicated lint-free glass cleaning cloth. Then buffed over with a fresh general purpose towel to leave a finish that now at least wouldn't show up any distracting smears. Once the glass was done, it was simply a case of reapplying the tired old plates, and while they ideally needed replacing, at least now weren't concealing years worth of organic growth. The front one was screwed directly back into the bumper with the original rusty hardware, but I did go to the effort of applying some 3M VHB trim tape to the rear one to stop it falling off again anytime soon, then finally called it a day. So yeah, it's a 15-year-old car that had essentially just had a chemical wash, heavy hand scrub, spritz and buff, but come on, bumps and scrapes aside, compared to how it sat at the start of the day, now looked like a new car in comparison. All of the organic mess was gone from the painted gold panels, which now had a healthy glow to them, and while there was likely still a small amount of greenery in some of the seals, honestly, how many times can you pressure wash a neglected car in one go? You could now also see out of the windows, distinguish the wheels from the tyres and sense a fresh sparkle in the Micra's frog-like eyes as it was now less embarrassed by the cleanliness of its juiced up big brother in the background. As I said at the beginning then, there ain't much joy for me personally cleaning something like this, but I do think as a supposed professional and one that's all up on the interweb, you should still have to prove your worth on something like this every once in a while. So as always, thanks for watching. Most if not all of the products used can be found linked in the description below. I'm not sure exactly what I'll be back with next, as this was the last one I got filmed before the zombie apocalypse, but rest assured I'll sort something out to keep things ticking over in the meantime, so stay tuned for whatever that may be.